What's up, world? It's your boy Tommy on the spot for Watchalong Wrestling. Thanks so much for checking us out here today. Very exciting new initiative that we have here on the channel, providing you with more content than ever before here on the Watchalong Wrestling YouTube channel. This is going to be a new initiative for us, at least through the summertime, as I'm joined by my main man, Steve, down in Orlando, Florida. Steve, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. We are our first full official week into summer break down here in Florida, and just been living it up for the past week. Looking forward to the next 7 or 8 weeks or however long it is.
That is awesome. Yeah, I could imagine just an incredible break that you get there. I recently had a 12-week break because my son was born, but I was with the baby the entire time.
Yeah,
so I don't know if it's the same.
I don't necessarily know how much of a vacation that is.
No, that was much more. I feel like I worked much harder there than I usually typically do here in the office. So, but that's a lot of fun. And Steve is going to be joining me here as we break down all the happenings in the world of professional wrestling. We'll kind of go long form on these, but then we'll separate them out throughout the week so that you get a little bit to whet your fancy. But if you do want it in long form, it'll be released at the end, so you can kind of hear us go through everything. And so we'll break down all the happenings in the world of pro wrestling, similarly to how we used to do in the world of Disney on our Disney 101 channel. Steve, are you excited to chat all things pro wrestling?
I am so ready.
It's going to be exciting. We'll talk, we're going to do a couple of different pieces here. We'll do a This Day in History at most weeks, as long as we can find something in history that relates to us. We will also be talking, we'll kind of come up with a theme for the week, and we'll also talk about some of the breaking news in the world of pro wrestling and some of the bigger stories. And then who knows, maybe we'll even bring the Disney 101 back as well and do a little Disney here on the Watchalong Wrestling channel as we continue to kind of bring all things together here on the Watchalong Wrestling channel. But I guess a great place for us to start is this weekend. It will be NXT Battleground 2024. That show is going to be taking place from the UFC Apex over in Las Vegas, Nevada. The first time WWE is doing a show in the UFC Apex. It is a smaller venue that UFC has run some shows periodically over time. And obviously with the merger of UFC, obviously they're both under the TKO Sports umbrella. WWE is going to be having their show held in a smaller venue, but at the same time, in a venue that is outside of the Performance Center, which is where they've typically been holding a lot of the NXT tapings, mostly all of them, out of the Performance Center. Steve, any plans to watch this show on Sunday night?
We haven't made any plans necessarily, but that's the great thing about summer vacation is that we haven't been really necessarily making too many plans. But we don't have anything else that we're doing, so I might turn it on. I watched NXT this past week and was kind of actually taken aback by how, number one, just like the quality of, all the matches, all the development, people that I haven't seen in a while, because I kind of fell off NXT throughout the school year. And then that now is kind of when I get back into it a little bit, and how some of the people that I knew of that were kind of just starting out, and a lot of them have kind of come into their own even in just this past year or so. And then the flip side of that is also a lot of the people that I see where I've kind of been wondering, like, oh, where has that person been for so long? And then, oh, yeah, the OC. And
they're right there.
There they are.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think Dave Meltzer, the Wrestling Observer, said it really well this week, that one of the things NXT does well is that a lot of their talent is very young. And there's a certain appeal of watching, the folks that are going to be a big deal in WWE. Like, you assume at some point Trick Williams is going to be a big deal for WWE. You assume at some point Roxanne Perez is going to be a big deal for WWE. Oba Femi, who's fresh out of Alabama, is going to be a big deal for WWE. And so these guys are all very young. Oba Femi, I think, is 23. Roxanne Perez is 21. These are very young talent. So there is a certain appeal of seeing them kind of be able to hold together a show, which is similar to the original NXT. And a lot of, being able to see some of those stars before they became big names, whether it be Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe when he was there, Shinsuke Nakamura. It's like you got your own little show with these individuals, knowing that they'd at some point be bigger names on the main roster.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it definitely has that same kind of like indie show vibe of the shows that we used to go to back in the day. It's just that, when you go to an indie show, even though they try to kind of thread a storyline through at certain points, if you haven't been going to every single indie show, you have no idea what the storylines are. So it's great to have that kind of indie show feel and also be able to maintain the storylines throughout.
No, it's a great point. Shawn Michaels says he put up the picture of him back when he was so he had left WWE for a bit to find himself, and he became a chef. And then Triple H went and recruited him to come back way back in the day in DX. And so he's since put a picture of him with the chef hat on as if he's cooking. Because, so the kids say, Sean's cooking. He's making some great storylines. So he's even acknowledged that. And he's done really well. I'm not going to break down all of the matches here, but I will read the card quickly for those who are unaware of the matches that are happening. It'll be the inaugural NXT Women's North American Championship match between Sol Roca, Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, Jada Parker, Michin. So you mentioned that's the former Mia Yim, but I think she's been Michin for a while, even on the main roster.
She kind of keeps going back and forth.
Yeah. And then Kalani Jordan. The Kalani Jordan, I think, also has been up on the main roster for a bit as well. The name, I think she had, but maybe I'm wrong there. But in any event, solid match there. Always like a good ladder match, and it's cool to see the women get a secondary title there. For the North American Championship, it'll be a triple threat match. The aforementioned Obafemi defending the title against Joe Coffey and the returning Wes Lee. In an NXT Underground match, Lola Vice will be taking on Shayna Baszler. This one's I like this match a lot, just from the idea that, the Underground piece is similar to the UFC Octagon. It has a UFC sort of influence. And obviously Shayna Baszler comes from the MMA background, so it makes sense for her to be a part of this. And I think having her a part of it certainly adds a little flair to the show as well. She's obviously right now just starting a brand new team with Zoe Stark, so she's involved with the main storylines as well, but doing this match here for NXT. Then you're going to have Roxanne Perez defending the NXT Women's Championship against Jordynne Grace, the current TNA Knockouts champion, who had made an appearance at the Royal Rumble. And then it'll be the Tag Team Championship. Very rare for NXT to go more than 5 matches, but they are on this show. NXT Tag Team Championship, Nathan Frazier teaming with Axiom to defend their titles against, as Steve mentioned, the OC, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. And then in the main event, singles match for the NXT Championship, it'll be Trick Williams defending the title against Ethan Page. I guess before we get into the relationship between TNA and NXT, what are your thoughts on Ethan Page's arrival in NXT and kind of how he has been seen and shown thus far?
I was very surprised. Obviously, that was one of the ones that I had to go back and watch once I found out that he made this shocking debut. I was very surprised that they were able to actually keep it a secret and actually, it wasn't a big flashy signing or anything like that. Like, when Jade Cargill was signed, it was huge news. And, even though they kind of kept her under wraps for a while, how quickly this turnaround was for Ethan Page, because I feel like he was in AEW not too long ago.
Yeah.
I don't remember timeline exactly wise, how long, but it feels like it's only been a couple of weeks.
Yeah. I mean, when I heard he had made his debut on NXT, the first thought I had was, oh my goodness, WWE and AEW are working together. And, Tony has an agreement in place because he can't use Ethan Page because the roster's so big. So Ethan Page I think he's been more relegated to like Rampage or Collision. But not to be the case. Instead, it has, he's signed with WWE, and they did a great job in keeping this a secret. And it's always great whenever they're able to do that. Whenever there's not even a hint. I didn't see even a story. I didn't see a suggestion. I didn't see Ethan Page will be great in NXT. Nothing. So I love when they're able to do their own thing, keep things under wraps, and be able to kind of bring this up as a surprise. And I think Ethan Page, he's looked like a total star in NXT so far.
Yeah, it kind of felt like he definitely was one of those like kind of never found something that really worked for him in AEW. Not that I necessarily followed his journey there too closely, but it always felt like anytime they brought him up and they tried to find something, it just kind of they never followed through with it. So it'll be good to see what he does with kind of maybe a solid background or, maybe a more solid storyline kind of going into it.
Absolutely. And I mean, going against Trick Williams, who I think is one of the hotter people in any brand for WWE right now. I still to this day love his entrance, especially when Booker T is on commentary and he's doing the yeah, man. I can't help but vibe even in my living room. So I think that's great. Another piece of this is obviously Jordynne Grace coming back to WWE after she made an appearance in the Royal Rumble. Now she's going for the NXT Women's Championship. What do you think about her being a part now and going to be on the show?
I like that it's kind of almost like now, a reoccurring thing, not reoccurring, but like, she showed up at the Rumble and it was completely a surprise, unannounced. And now she's showing up here in NXT, surprise, completely unannounced. So I like that it's, not to kind of preview something else that we might be talking about later, but it's not so much of a forbidden door anymore. Like, right. And, it's not like they're not making any, kind of illusions as far as like, no, she is the TNA championship and, champion. And just the fact that they are talking about another brand on a WWE show just shows kind of how far the business has come.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you never would have seen this. It would have been so cool if, back in the day, let's say 2006, 2007, if Michelle McCool was attacked by Gail Kim, who was the Knockouts champion for TNA, like that would have just been unbelievable. But I think part of it is with the existence of AEW now and WWE, their popularity being, really at an all-time high in a very long time, high, I guess, them being more comfortable in talking about the competition and also now utilizing this to help TNA, but then also maybe having this as an option for some of their current crop of talent. They're doing an angle here with Brooks Jensen, who's on the NXT roster. He had mentioned that he had gotten, let go from WWE, but then he showed up this past week on NXT, at least in the live arena, and was expressing his frustration. And then afterwards on a promo he put out on X, mentioned how he may have to go now and make an impact. So definitely feels like WWE and TNA are working together. I think this is great for TNA. I don't think it could be a bad thing for them at all. I mean, I think having anyone from WWE be a part of their show, I think is great. And at the same time, giving them the exposure to have their champion as a part of a WWE show would be something if Jordynne Grace were to win the title on Sunday. I think that would be great. I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be pretty cool if it did.
And that's kind of one of the always like trepidations that I have of like, okay, yes, it's going to be, kind of champion versus champion kind of thing. But are you actually going to have somebody that belongs to another company have your title? And right. That feels like that's kind of getting into more AEW and New Japan type of area. But this is, I also have to say 100%, would not have happened had it not be the Triple H era. Yeah. If it was still Vince that had control, but also, coming out with, the UFC merger and all that stuff. Like, I feel like all of that has kind of changed the landscape moving forward.
I completely agree. Yeah, no, it is. It's it's really an exciting kind of a breath of fresh air. And, the main thing I think about here with TNA is, how far is this partnership going to continue? Because obviously, they currently have, right now their champion is Moose. Will Moose make an appearance in WWE? He's a hoss of a guy, and I think it'd be cool to see Moose over there. Will perhaps Trick Williams make an appearance for TNA? I think that's fun to think about. And, I mean, you have a variety of individuals who currently work for TNA and who are a big part of their product, who were just recently who just recently left WWE. You have Dolph Ziggler, who's been with the company for many years. He just left WWE. He's now making an impact with TNA, pun completely intended. You have somebody like Mustafa Ali, who's their X Division champion. He was a big part of WWE, seemed pretty unhappy there, and now he's kind of going over there. So at the end of the day, I'm very interested to see what does this mean for, some of the stars who had been there. Zachary Wentz, who's in a tag team with Wes Lee in NXT now. He's a part of the Rascals for TNA. What does this mean for the folks who were let go from WWE, now wrestling for TNA? Are they now going to be kind of tied back into stories?
I don't think we're going to get like a, kind of forbidden door type situation where we're going to have a full, event or anything like that. I don't think we're going to get any sort of invasion angle or anything like that. But I could see some of the bigger names on one show or the other, at least on an NXT TNA level.
Yeah.
To see what it kind of goes from there. It feels like at this point, that's all that WWE is kind of willing to risk, for lack of a better term, where it's like they're not going to be sending, Cody over to TNA or anything like that.
That'd be some like,
it would be amazing. But, I think that this feels like a good kind of level for them to kind of be coexisting here.
Absolutely. And I think, we had, the big match with Rollins when Rollins went down to NXT, and Becky Lynch is running NXT. The New Day's running NXT. But I feel like this is the first time where NXT is starting to become, really must watch again since the Black and Gold era, where, you had just incredible matches all over. So I'm excited to see kind of where things go. And I think I may have jumped off there for a second, but I'm excited to see where things go and how deep this relationship between TNA and WWE goes for. It should be a lot of fun and very exciting as we get to this event here on Sunday. And I love that it's a Sunday show. I know a lot of folks, they love the Saturday shows. For me, I have a very hard time watching the Saturday shows. I like to see the more traditional Sunday show, and I may probably be able to try to watch at least some of this live, so it'll be fun to check out.
Oh, yeah. I mean, during the school year, love a Saturday show.
Yeah. Well, especially because you can actually watch it and stay up and enjoy that.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, no, very, very cool. And but yeah, should be a very good show. And it'll be interesting to see as we continue here with the relationship between WWE and TNA and kind of how far that goes.
Sure, for sure.
Speaking of old rival promotions with WWE, as we look back into the years of the Attitude Era and some of the most exciting, the wrestling boom, if you will, there's obviously the biggest rival for WWE probably ever is WCW. This week on Vice, they debuted the Dark Side of the Ring's latest special with the executive producer of the final boss himself, the People's Champ, The Rock. They're doing a 4-part docuseries called Who Killed WCW. Steve, have you been able to check this out?
I haven't. I kind of heard about it.
Yeah.
And I think I've gotten some bits and pieces of it on TikTok. But it sounds very intriguing.
Yeah, I feel like at one point I'm a little Dark Side of the Ring out a bit. I feel some of those are a little depressing. But with that being said, with The Rock being tied to this, and because The Rock is tied to this, them having access to a variety of footage. I mean, they were showing clips right from WCW. Probably my favorite clip I saw is the clip they showed of Kevin Nash lawn darting Rey Mysterio into the trailer. And when he gets, and then they cut to Kevin Nash, and he's like, when I did that to Rey Mysterio, Rey said, "Hey, Kevin, any chance you could throw me through the window?" And Kevin Nash's response is, "Well, no, I can't, because if I did, you'd die." Which is just, so that's why he does the trailer instead. So interesting piece. My plan is at some point to check it out, but with this, the unveiling of this docuseries, I thought it'd be fun here to bring back the old Mount Rushmore here. We've done a few Mount Rushmores here on the Watchalong Wrestling YouTube channel, so I thought it'd be fun to kind of pick your brain. If you were to come up with Mount Rushmore, so it's got to be 4 individuals. We're not going to count the NWO as one, because I think that'd be an easy way out. I think you could use I think you can count a tag team as one here, but I don't think you can count a full faction, because if you count a full faction, of course the NWO will be involved.
You could just do NWO, black and white, NWO, Wolfpack, the LWO, and then there's got to be a 4th one in there.
I think there's the NWO team as well, with Horace Hogan and maybe the Butcher and all those guys. But yeah, no. So it's got to be 4 people you think about. And that'll be the only criteria I'll give you. Any 4 people. We can kind of go one by one on this. When you think of WCW, who would be on your WCW Mount Rushmore?
So, and I've actually been kind of trying to go, kind of go back and forth and say, okay, like what does it mean to be a WCW guy? Because from my perspective, I would want, like, one of my knee-jerk reactions was to pick Hogan as one of my guys. But, and, for all that he did with, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and with the NWO, with all of that stuff. But knowing, kind of, again, like a lot of more of the behind-the-scenes stuff, and also kind of just more associating him most of the time with WWF, I decided to kind of leave Hogan off of this one, at least for me personally.
I like that. Yeah.
So I'm starting off instead with Booker T.
Oh, I like that.
As my fourth guy.
Five-time WCW World Champion. I think I only did 4 or 5 times, but I'll spare you the last 5 times. That's a good one, especially because he really was WCW through and through. Obviously started out in WCW Harlem Heat. And then after he had became probably the most successful tag team in all of WCW history, goes on to become the U.S. champion, eventually the world champion, and is the final world champion, leading WCW into the invasion with WWE. I think that's a great choice.
Yeah. I mean, just like everything that he did with WCW, even into the invasion and even into, throughout all of that stuff, he was there literally until the end. So absolutely. I feel, kind of got to give it to him there.
That's a great one there.
Go back and forth, or do you want me to do all 4 of mine?
No, we go back and forth. I think that would be good.
Okay.
And with me, I'll start with the man who I grew up always kind of being aware of this. Never a WCW guy growing up, never a huge WCW fan, just because I think my parents were always steering me away because I'd always get the WWE pay-per-views, and they were not about to start adding an additional pay-per-view every month. But for me, I was always aware of where WCW was and what they were doing. And when I think WCW, I think of the man who just retired not long ago during his final match with AEW. I'm thinking, of course, about the man they call Sting. I think of him as, Surfer Sting, and then, being able to recreate himself and reinvent himself as, Crow Sting, and leading to the biggest story, probably the biggest pay-per-view ever in WCW. Even I ordered it. Starrcade 1997. I know it ended up having some snafus along the way. But with that being said, I still, Sting is definitely Mr. WCW in my mind through and through. And so that is why he is on my Mount Rushmore.
And you know what? I'll just say now, I also had put Sting on mine.
Yeah.
I was kind of going no particular order here, but I was going to save him for last. But since you mentioned him, I would definitely put Sting up there also. And I'm also thinking back to the WCW video games. There was the World Tour, and then WCW NWO Revenge, and he was always one of my go-tos when I was playing those games. It also feels like, again, like WCW guy, because he was one of the few like big names that didn't jump ship until way later.
Right. I mean, way later. He goes in 2001, and he doesn't make his first appearance till 2014 for WWE. So he was really the last holdout there for sure.
But then, so I don't know if I should add my next guy then.
Sure, go right ahead.
My next guy is, again, another one that I immediately jumped when I think WCW, one of the first guys that I ever watched, and one of the first wrestler figures that I ever got was Diamond Dallas Page, DDP.
It's a great one. Yeah, and WCW, another full-time, pretty much all WCW guy until he did finally come to WWE, and one of the few who took less money to come to WWE because he wanted to make sure he got his opportunity. And, I'd say an inspiration to anybody out there who is always thinking about, maybe it's too late for me. He got to start way late in the wrestling business and was able to, reach the pinnacle as WCW champion. I think that's a great choice. And for me, I'm going to go with my next choice here on my Mount Rushmore, and I will include the aforementioned Hollywood Hulk Hogan. Too sweet, me brother. For me, I think Hogan jumping over from WWE to WCW back in 94, and I was watching in 94. Yes, I'm that old. And when that happened, I remember as a kid just losing my mind because it really felt like, all right, they're legit now. They got the biggest fish in the pond. They got the guy, the WWE guy, Mr. WWE, to come over to WCW. So I really think he legitimized WCW. And then I think his heel turn and then being the leader of the NWO was something that, again, really legitimize them. And I think the Hogan heel turn with the NWO is what allowed WCW to beat WWE in the ratings for so many weeks, head-to-head, Nitro over Raw. So that is why Hogan might be my favorite guy in the world, but he makes my Mount Rushmore here for WCW.
I feel like then I need to kind of throw out an honorable mention here at this point before I get to the number one. And you had mentioned tag teams, and I feel like that would be a good opportunity then to throw out the Outsiders there.
Yeah.
As just because of, obviously, and again, my introduction to wrestling was a little bit later on. So by the time I started watching wrestling, Nash and Hall were already in WCW. They were already part of the NWO and all that stuff. That's how I got into it, or at least
that's
partially.
Interesting.
Yeah. So from me, they were always those guys. It wasn't until when I got older and realized, oh wait, they were in WWF. Oh wait, like they were big deals. Like they weren't Nash and Hall. They were Diesel and Razor Ramon, or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I definitely still think of them when I think of WCW, but my number one guy, whenever I think of WCW, immediately is Goldberg.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew you were going to say Goldberg. Well, I think you've always been a fan of his, right?
Yes. Yeah, always.
Well, I think it comes to a couple things. I think we're both Jewish kids, so I think Goldberg just being Jewish, I think when you found that out, I think it was always like a really cool thing. I never really hated Goldberg until Hunter came out on Tough Enough, and he was like saying all those things. I was like, you know what? He's right. Screw Goldberg.
Definitely not propaganda. Yeah, sure.
What's that?
Definitely not propaganda. Yeah, sure.
Exactly. Well, and I'll say this much. I completely agree. He's on my Mount Rushmore as well. To me, the greatest created character in the history of WCW. Sting comes from that NWA era, so he's in there from that. But I think in terms of like created character, created great idea, because I think NWO, there was some influence from Japan for that, from Eric Bischoff. But in terms of this great idea, you have this guy showing up on the show as almost an afterthought. He gets the win and then suddenly continues to get wins to the point where it's like, hold on a minute, this dude has not lost. He's got this huge streak of 100 some odd wins and no losses, something that had never been done before. Genius booking, genius way to present him, and obviously led to, another resurgence. He's coming up the same time as the NWO is, and I think both of them led to the success, really, of WCW during the Attitude Era. So Goldberg is absolutely a part of my Mount Rushmore. If I would do a honorable mention, it would be to Rey Mysterio. I know Rey was never a top guy for WCW, but what I will say is the thing that drew me to WCW was seeing the cruiserweight division and these guys who were just unbelievable, like what WWE wished they had with the light heavyweight division, whether it be, Rey and Psychosis and Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, Chris Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, so many great cruiserweights. I put Rey above there because I always thought he was the most spectacular and way above his time. And I just thought also the costuming, the masks and everything really just like drew me in and gave you something completely different that wasn't happening on the WWE side of things. But for me, even though I love Rey, I was very close to putting him on there. Thought about Booker T as well. But if I'm going for my fourth Mount Rushmore choice, take a guess as to who it is.
So here's my, I'm trying to think, are we going like homegrown WCW, or are we talking what he meant to the business, or are we talking about your personal favorite?
Definitely not my personal favorite. Now I gave it away, but it's definitely not my personal favorite.
And if it's none of anybody that I mentioned?
No one you mentioned, nope.
All right.
You would never mention him. You're not a fan either.
With all of those, well, if you're going to say that also, then I'm going to have to go Ric Flair.
It is indeed the Nature Boy. Woo! Ric Flair, Slick Rick himself. At the end of the day, Ric Flair was WCW before I even knew of anything about WCW, and comes over to WWE as the real world champion. And I remember my father, as a very little kid, when Flair came over to WWE, being like, we don't want this guy. He's WCW, right? And so, but at the same time, he was the WCW guy. He was right there with Sting. They had the last match against each other for a reason on Nitro. And I think, that's why I have to include him in my Mount Rushmore. So to recap, my Mount Rushmore: Hollywood Hulk Hogan, Sting, Ric Flair, Goldberg. Steve's Mount Rushmore, Booker T, Diamond Dallas Page, Goldberg, and who was the last one? Sting.
Wait, yeah.
Sting. There you go. Yeah, I was like, wait a second. So we were right there on two of them. I do like your logic about not including Hogan though almost turned me on that too, because I would have liked to include Ray, but I don't know if Ray himself belonged on the list as much as it was like if you were to do it just like in silos, it probably would have been NWO, Cruiserweight Division, Goldberg, Sting, something like that.
I was thinking, you could just lump the entirety of Cruiserweight Division in there, just because number one, anything that WWF had as a comparison with the light heavyweight title, it was basically a joke. It was meaningless. I'm pretty sure it just started as a joke when they gave it to Gilbert.
Yeah, for sure. That pretty much killed it right then and there. But yeah, no, that was good. But yeah, good times on that. Great choices. So to wrap this week, we'll start with our traditional This Week in History. And we're going to go back to something that means something to me. It was way back in 2004. So we're looking at coming up on the 20th anniversary of my high school graduation. Yes, I'm that old. I know. Yeah. I know. But in that time period, for that particular event, my high school graduation, I had a little party to celebrate this. My parents had gathered a bunch of my buddies together, gathered a whole bunch of the crew together, and we all went to a China buffet. I think it was called Uncle Wok or something like that. Sound about right? I think Uncle Wok. I think that's what
that sounds about right, yeah.
And it was a brunch on a Saturday afternoon. So you had a bunch of friends come, a bunch of family. Everyone came through. My mother did like a candles for me because growing up, a lot remember? It's so weird. It's like, so basically, growing up, everyone I knew had a bar mitzvah or a confirmation or a sweet 16, where you typically would have the candles. Because I was by religion, my mother's Jewish, my dad is Catholic. So growing up, I was kind of in the middle. I never really had any of these things. So for my college graduation, my mother had kind of given out candles for each year of my life growing up as a student. So it'd be like 1 year, a candle for kindergarten, a candle for first grade. Pretty cool idea. And I thought it was interesting nonetheless. With that being said, and really what she did was she found a way to shoehorn every guest in. So you'd have like, here, kindergarten, here's all of, Tommy's friends from camp. Here, again, first grade, here's his aunt, whatever. Third grade, here's these random cousins I never met who for some reason were at the event, but they meant so much to me growing up. So you went through the whole thing, and it was fun. But somehow, at the end of this, as is, happened to me in my life so many times, did you get any tickets to this as my gift?
I don't remember.
I don't know how it happened.
20 years ago.
I know the idea came from you, where you were like, hey, there's a WWE show tonight at Madison Square Garden. I don't know if it was like my gift from you. Might have been. That makes sense. It might have been. But the thing was also we had more people coming with us. So I don't think we had tickets yet because I think we threw out the idea, hey, who wants to go to this to keep it going? And then that's when we brought some other friends with us to the show, and we all went kind of together.
I think at the very least, I may have paid for your ticket.
Maybe that was what it was.
I don't know if I don't know if I would have been the one to get these tickets.
Yeah. I think we must have gotten them at the show because we had people who were coming, and it was just a random, like 5 people is what happened. I think we threw out the idea, and I remember you saying, hey, like, I think you had to talk, I think you chatted with my mom because my mom's a very type person. They're like, yeah, hey, we have this event, and the event is from 12 noon to 3 o'clock. But then after that, we've got 1,000 other events at the house. We'll be together all night long and just keep the party going. I think you had actually spoke with her and said, like, hey, there's a WWE show at Madison Square Garden tonight. Is it cool if we go to it after this? So what a great surprise to me. And I love nothing better than a big surprise wrestling show out of nowhere. I remember we kind of finished up the event. You were like, hey, what are you doing tonight? And I was like, I'm not too sure. And you said, like, well, I just talked to your mom. We're going to go down to WWE and at Madison Square Garden. And I was just, to the moon excited about that. What a cool idea. Then you informed me that some other friends of ours were going who I thought were some questionable choices of guests to join us because those were not our usual wrestling crew of buddies. But I was like, I'll roll with it. And so it was supposed to be two friends of ours who, unfortunately we just lost a little bit of contact with, myself, yourself, and our main man James, who has been on a few different events with us. He's been on the channel here at Watchalong Wrestling. And we were all set right afterwards to go to Madison Square Garden. We were going to go to so we went to Douglaston because one of our friends lived in Douglaston, and she had said she can get us discounted. She had a hookup with the LARR to get us discounted tickets to the LARR to go to Madison Square Garden. So we hopped on the railroad to go to MSG, and the discounted tickets were no connection she had. It's just you clicked on the city ticket instead of paying for like an off-peak ticket, which was actually awesome. It was like $5 each way, maybe even less, maybe like $3.25 to get to on the LARR. And LARR was like $7-8 at the time, so it was a great thing. And away we were over to Madison Square Garden, and to this day, I'm not entirely sure why, but once we had gotten to Forest Hills, I guess James realized that was his stop at the time to get off the train, and decided to do just that. Away he went, got off the train, and that was the end of James for the evening. We did not see him at the show. He did not join us for the event, and that was pretty much the end of him.
And it wasn't the only time that he did it either.
Well, there were a couple, but that was the only wrestling one. But there were a couple other times too where if he wasn't feeling something, he was like, you know what, my name's Paul. That's between y'all, and I'm out of here. And so he got off the train, and it was just the four of us going. And at this point now, I'm like, even though I'm excited about it now, I'm like, we're 2 and 2. We've got two folks who really are excited about the wrestling show. We've got two folks who, probably gonna want to chit chat. Two girls who are
just there because it's something to do.
Right, just there because it's something to do. We're gonna, jump up and down. We're gonna, be into it, but we're not necessarily excited about any of the wrestling storylines. So I knew at this point, I was like, all right, hopefully we'll be able to still enjoy the show. I'm still excited we're going, and I'll be able to just kind of ignore them out if they start acting a fool, and if instead they're having a conversation about nothing to do with wrestling throughout the whole show, I'll try to balance it out. Any memories from attending that show with these two individuals?
I barely remember any of this. I'm looking at the card right now, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I don't remember that happening, or So I mean, I feel like this kind of a lot of it during this time period kind of blends and blurs together for me.
Well, and I think for me, the biggest thing I remember about the event is, this is still post WrestleMania 20. Chris Benoit is your world champion. Yeah. It's amazing to me that WWE has MSG has landed this show 3 months after WrestleMania 20. Like the idea that WrestleMania took place at Madison Square Garden, and a couple months later they're right back at Madison Square Garden for another show is just crazy to me. But that's another reason it meant so much to me, the show, because it had really been an idea where I didn't get a chance to go to WrestleMania 20. I obviously really wanted to. You can go in the archives, hear my story about it. But we tried to go get tickets for WrestleMania 20, and right when I got on the line to go, we basically got to the front, and they did a raffle for everyone online. So even though we were toward the front, we somehow now got moved towards the back. Weren't able to go to WrestleMania 20. It's I have my pinnacle shows I wanted to go to as a kid that wasn't able to. It's SummerSlam 98, Rumble 2000, WrestleMania 20. Those are my trifecta of shows that I feel like I missed out on. And with that being said, you were at WrestleMania 20.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you were able to make it. And I think at the time we had really, just started becoming close friends, I'd say, over the last year and a half, probably after, leading into, we knew each other for a couple of years, but I think we got close probably around like end of 2002 into 2003. So, you had gone with your cousins, and so that
during the Very Cody New Year's, I think that's when it cemented everything.
Right. Was Very Cody New Year's 2003 into 2004 or 2002 into 2003? I feel like it was 2002 into 2003.
I think that's when it was, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Because you wouldn't have gotten such a pivotal spot on the candles if it was just a 6-month friend.
Yeah. No, so definitely before then.
Yeah, no, for sure. But yeah, so that makes sense. So here we were on our way, and you have the card. And so the thing I remember most about this was that whenever Triple H was shown on the screen, the entire Madison Square Garden was probably remembering the days of WrestleMania 20, and we're a little excited about it, and we're giving the yell, "You tapped out, you tapped out, you tapped out." which was fine for the first couple of times. But the girls that we were with, as Steve gives another big thumbs up. You remember
Yeah,
that?
I love that.
It's a cartoon animation on, and so, at the end of the day, it ended up that was something we did once and it was fun. But the girls we were with were doing, you tapped out over and over and over and over, and it went on the whole show. And it was like, you tapped out, you tapped out, you tapped out, and we were like, all right,
I guess you find something and you stick with it.
Exactly. Main event of this show, I remember it being Benoit versus Triple H. So it was cool. It was harking back to WrestleMania 20, and I think Benoit won the match. Is that correct?
He did via, of course, Crippler Crossface, and he tapped out again.
And so, and tapped Hunter again at Madison Square Garden. So that's a cool little tidbit there. Do you want to run down the card real quick?
Sure. So we have the WWE Raw Tag Team Champions, Rob Conway and Sylvain Grenier, or that was La Resistance, right?
La Resistance, of course, one of the all-time greatest.
Yep, defeated Rhino and Tajiri.
Good team. Good team. Don't remember them teaming ever, but good team.
Yeah, no, I remember that vaguely. Eugene pins Jonathan Coachman with the rock bottom and people's elbow. Moments after, William Regal countered the interference of Eric Bischoff. That's
fun. I mean, a lot of big names in there. I still cringe just thinking of Eugene hitting the rock bottom and people's But other than that, that's cool. That's a cool match.
Kane pinned Matt Hardy with the chokeslam.
I must have been pissed. I must have been hot, ready to get down and defend my guy, Matt Hardy.
And I think both of the girls that we were with also were Matt Hardy fans.
Hardy fans. I do remember that.
The Hurricane and Maven.
I
don't remember being a tag team at all. Defeated Garrison Cade and Test, who I also don't remember being a tag team.
That had to be 4 random dudes in the back. Hey, get out there, get 10 minutes, and away we go.
Who wants a paycheck? Go.
Exactly.
We got Chris Jericho pinned Batista.
Wow, Chris Jericho. I guess so, because Batista was still in Evolution at the time, so he's still on the rise.
Yeah, we have WWE Intercontinental Champion Randy Orton pinning Edge.
Wow, good match.
And WWE Women's Champion Trish Stratus with Tyson Tomko, which I do vaguely remember now.
Because she went with Christian.
Yeah, pinning Victoria.
Interesting. And then the main event was Hunter and Benoit.
And Hunter and himself, yeah.
Wow, Hunter and himself. That's, I will say, Batista, Jericho, Edge, Orton, Triple H, Benoit, on a house show, Matt Hardy, Kane, solid house show for 2004.
I mean, those are a lot of big names, and they're even big names then. So,
they really were pulling out all the stops for the Garden even back then. Interesting, Shawn Michaels isn't on the card. This is when he starts doing a little bit of his, he'd be around for the bigger matches, but would then take some time off. So I don't even think, come to think of it, I don't even think he's on SummerSlam 2004. And obviously this is in the summer right before the summer of 2004. So Benoit would eventually lose the title to Orton at SummerSlam. But really fun show.
What I think is interesting, this is random, not necessarily about the show, but I'm looking at the very next house show that was in Salisbury, Maryland. And it is the same exact card, same exact results down the line, with the exception of the Hurricane with Maven defeated Garrison Cade with Test. So it wasn't a tag team match. It was just they came out.
And 10 years after that graduation, for a fact, I would have been trying to get the crew together to push it one more night to get to Salisbury, Maryland for the next house show. That is so cool. And nowhere near each other either. Did they have to book the next house show at Salisbury, Maryland? They couldn't have done it in Philly or Connecticut.
The crazy thing is, it looks like that was a SmackDown, maybe something. Oh wait, hold on. Or I'm getting kind of conflicting things here. It looks like it was a Great American Bash show.
Oh.
That was also that night, and this was the matinee.
Oh, wow. So they did the Raw during the day, and then the Great American Bash at night.
Yeah, so not
Great American Bash, I think, was
with a house show. It was also, according to this, it was they did all of this match, and then they would have had to basically drive overnight to Maryland to wake up and do this as a matinee all over again.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. So these are the results from June 26, 2004. Highly recommend the History of WWF Grand Cawthon site if you get an opportunity to check that out. So grateful that it exists, because if not, this is a random house show we don't have any memory of. And so living all these results really took me back into a very fun time. And so grateful that we were able to reconnect here on this 20 years later, and that we've remained friends all throughout. And yes, I did indeed think about contacting the two young ladies we were with and asking them to join us. We haven't spoken to them in many years. One of them, I'd say, in about 5 to 10 years. One of them in about 15 to 20 years. And I was going to call them and see if they wanted to join us right here on the Watchalong Wrestling YouTube channel to break things down. This 20-year later house show that I got for my high school graduation. I don't remember much about my high school graduation. It was held at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum, which I loved. But I don't remember too much about that high school graduation or high school in general. But I do remember that you gave me a gift of the WWE the same night as my high school graduation party. You don't get much better than that.
Nope, especially not in 2004.
Definitely not. Well, I think that's definitely a way to end things on a high note. Let us know what you thought about this if you watched this over on the long form that we put up. But if not, and if you watched each piece of it, let us know what you think. You can find me over on Twitter at WatchalongTommy. You can't find Steve anywhere.
At least not on Twitter or X for sure. Huh?
Are you on Instagram still?
Yeah, but I think my thing is private because I don't want a lot of my students snooping on me. So
I don't blame you. Yeah, mine's my non-kayfabe one is private too, and I barely ever use it. So, but you can always contact me over on Twitter at WatchalongTommy. Maybe Steve will someday make an account just so you can be at WatchalongSteve and then never use it again. Maybe I'll make one as him and make it WatchalongSteve. It'll just be retweets of all of my tweets.
Anything I text you, you just put up there and
boom. I love it. But in any event, thanks so much, Steve, for joining us here this week. We'll be excited to do it all again next week as we look forward to the Clash at the Castle show, as we're just a little over a week away as we come to you here with this week's show. Till next time, everybody, thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again real soon on Watchalong Wrestling.